War drums beat around the world as U.S. paralyzed by infighting. The United States of America Corporation, now 4 months into its bankruptcy, is becoming increasingly dysfunctional and torn by infighting. This has left a power vacuum around the world and is raising the specter and multiple regional wars breaking out. Meanwhile, East-West negotiations to replace the U.S. corporation in D.C. with something more functional remain stalled as Asian representatives feign health issues to avoid new talks. This could result in a combined U.S., Indian, Japanese, and Russian assault against China if left unattended for too long, warned members of the Black Sun military order. The rising international tensions come as the U.S. government is now withdrawing and reducing its military presence in Iraq, Afghanistan, Israel, Germany, and elsewhere. U.S. President Donald Trump is doing this due to the combination of failed campaigns, isolationism, and a lack of funds. The biggest fallout of the U.S. disarray continues to be seen in the Middle East, where a drawdown in the U.S. forces is leading to a multi-pronged attempt to re-establish the Ottoman Empire. Turkey is now waging de facto wars of conquest, reconquest in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. Turkish military sources say a deal has been reached with Iran to split the Middle East. Iran will get the Shia parts of Iraq and Syria. However, Turkey is engaged in a proxy war against Iran in Yemen, with the real prize being control of the Saudi oil fields in the mostly Shia provinces bordering Yemen. Turkey is thus now de facto seeking control of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Libya, and Israel, sources say. This grand plan can be seen unfolding on the ground. In Iraq, Turkey has responded immediately to the announced U.S. withdrawal by making a major incursion into Kurdistan. The end game is to take over all the sunny parts of Iraq, Turkish sources say. The Turks have also ousted warlord Khalifa Haftar from around the capital of Tripoli in Libya and are now targeting his home turf in eastern Libya, where 70% of the nation's oil reserves are located. Since France's economy depends in large part on Libyan oil, paid for with fiat euros, a French warship tried to stop a Turkish vessel from supplying arms to its forces in Libya last week. The result was that the Turkish warship threatened a French warship with a missile attack 3 times before the French withdrew. The fact that 2 supposed NATO allies nearly started a sea battle shows just how much the de facto U.S. absence is destabilizing the situation. France asked for NATO help, but it is not clear if NATO has an interest in helping the country continue its theft of Libyan oil. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu wanted to send a delegation of military and security officials to Turkey, but as no progress was expected to be made through any sort of negotiation at this stage, the decision was made to postpone the Russian Foreign and Defense Minister visit to Turkey, a senior Turkish official told Turkish media. In other words, Turkey was choosing war and assuming Asia would back down. The situation has gotten to the point where Egypt is the only country in the Middle East with an army big enough to stop Turkey. Egypt has already threatened to intervene against Turkey in Libya. Turkish state media responded by saying Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's threat of military intervention is unacceptable and amounts to be declaration of war. Egypt ranks 9th in the world military power compared to the 11th for Turkey, so any battle between these countries over control of the Middle East would be the largest war since World War II. Israel, by the way, ranks 18th in military power and thus, now that it no longer has US military support, would have to bow the winner to this conflict. Of course, the arrogant Zionists are shooting themselves in the foot, if not the head, by planning to annex the West Bank. They would be better off siding with crypto Jew al-Sisi against Turkey if they knew what was good for them. Things are further complicated for Egypt because neighbor Ethiopia is building a dam across the Blue Nile, threatening Egypt's lifeline. Russian analysts think a war between Egypt and Ethiopia, each country with a population about 100 million, is inevitable. The Middle East is not the only piece in turmoil. There is also now the very real possibility of a war involving Pakistan and China against India. The fiercest border clashes between India and China since the 1960s have been the news for several weeks now. Last week, Pakistan joined the fray by bombarding India. It appears Pakistan and China are betting the US would not participate in a battle over Kashmir and disputed Himalayan territories, according to MI6 analysis. India, for its part, needs to incorporate Sri Lanka and Bangladesh to counter Pakistani and Chinese influence in the region, MI6 analysts say. The US military appears to be concentrating its effort now on China and South Africa, leaving Europe, India, and the Middle East to Russia and whoever else wants to fill in the vacuum. In South Africa, the US regime failed to seize the world's largest oil reserves in Venezuela as China, Russia, Iran, Cuba offer protection. Since the US corporate government can get Venezuelan oil, it has tripled Colombian cocaine production in order to get desperately needed hard currency. Some sort of joint Colombian and Brazilian move on Venezuela is still possible but not very likely. The real battlefield is, of course, China and the Far East. The US has sent 3 carrier groups to the South China Sea, while China has begun serious provocation against US ally Taiwan. However, a certain secret American deep state agency made a huge strategic mistake when it instructed South Korean agents to use US high-tech energy weaponry to effectively poison North Korea. Strongman Kim Jong-un when he met Trump because that eliminated a major potential ally. If the Americans knew that was good for them, they would punish Kim's murderers to cut the tail of the lizard and try to forge an anti-Chinese alliance of Japan and a unified Korean peninsula. The Japanese, who have never been a historical part of China, would become such a move. The Koreans are also wary of becoming a Chinese province. The Chinese, meanwhile, are looking to take over Indonesia and Australia, according to Asian secret society sources. This can be seen most recently by the state-sponsored cyber attack against the Australian government. CIA sources in Southeast Asia say over 1 million Chinese agents have infiltrated Indonesia in recent years. Of course, Indonesia is also key to any sort of reboot of the global financial system that is the subject of ongoing secret East-West negotiations. The outline agreed to so far envisages combining traditional Asian gold and other treasures with the here and now FATE financial system controlled by the West. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Indonesia last week on a secret mission to try and gain control of the Indonesian gold, according to P3 three-month sources. However, he returned empty-handed. Western intelligence agency sources with security clearance above borders say Mr. Trump and Mr. Pompeo have been asked to stand back as diplomatic surgery takes place. According to these sources, we envisage the future planning agency being both headquartered in London and in Tokyo, with West and East alignment for ease of always-on management. If things get settled, we will provide an operating budget and we can then move to granular details. Right now, the Asian money is illiquid and they need to execute a transaction to free that into existing MIAT currency. The FRB is now controlled by the US Treasury, so the US agencies will need to engage. We will work with them on 5 eyes so we can look into that. It may be for that reason Mr. Pompeo make a move. Once the future planning agency funding is secured, the dysfunctional US government will be replaced root and branch, according to Pentagon sources. The US military is the only functional part of the apparatus. We help oversee a complete Chapter 11 reorganization of the US corporation. It may or may not involve a merger of the United States and Canada, the sources say. If such a merger takes place, not in a million years, would the Castro-type Iranian Jesuit satanic nutcase Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau be given a role, according to MI6 British intelligence. There may be more for young Castro to worry about if a rumored 5,000 protesters assemble at the American embassy on Ottawa on July 1st with a formal request for the FBI and the Mexican National Police to investigate the crimes of Justin Trudeau and rampant corruption in Canada, and the RCMP under Section 27.5 of the USMCA, which comes into effect on that day. Meanwhile, P3 Freemanson sources say both the Rockefeller and the Rothschild clans have agreed to surrender and help with the new system. The problem is the Gnostic Illuminati remain opposed to any participation by these bloodline oligarchs. The P3 is trying to mediate. With such complication, the negotiations are looking like they will not conclude before the autumn, according to sources involved. When they do, though, a big celebrity bash involving musicians is expected to kick off the new system, the sources added. In the meantime, gear up for a long, hot summer, especially in the US. The anarchy there is expected to worsen, but the US military will make sure no major bloodshed or full-scale civil war takes place. Any election in November will require full-scale military intervention to ensure voting takes place using paper ballots amid freedom of the press.